I've got three questions. The first two are directed at the two people who work for Gray Line, and the last question is for all of you. Rick, you are perceived as a protest candidate, and I want you to tell me why you are more than just a protest candidate.
Well, protest against what?
James, next to you.
Well, people talk all the time with tour guides, no doubt about that. And any time that somebody dumps on another tour guide, and I'm certainly not talking about James, I'm talking about him and everybody else, I either walk away or I'm not part of that. And when I talk to some of the other tour guides who are considering running, and they ask me the same question, are you a protest candidate against Jimmy here, Brother Music, to be formal? I said, no, it's about issues. The issue being money, money, money in our jobs. I don't see anything wrong with Brother Music being on the executive committee. It's just that considering the number of our membership, we ought to have somebody else on the executive board from our section. And we lost Andy Cedar, Karen Fleming, and Menson Kinvey, right? So I think we have to, as tour guides, ticket sellers, and dispatchers, we got to think, yeah, we need a little more representation on the board. And that's what I've said over to everybody. People have heard it, I'm not just blowing this right now. This is what I've said. If I'm there 5 days a week. Anybody can talk to me, I'm there.
Okay, James, why would anybody want to protest you?
Well, if anyone's elected to office, people are going to disagree with some decisions they make. And it would be natural for people who disagree with some decisions to want to vote for somebody else. But I mean, that's the case in any situation where you have an elected officer.
Okay, I wasn't specific enough with that. Give me a second.
What, you get to do redos?
Okay, somebody else will get you later. All right, for everybody. We are talking amongst ourselves at Gray Line of trying to bring in one, maybe two more companies. I assume that in all of the various branches, someone's looking around and seeing another company that can be brought in, or at least potentially brought in. What can we expect from each one of you to support any campaign to expand the base of the rank and file, to bring in more branches into the local? What would you be committing in terms of time and resources for example, and what's most important to us is to bring City Sites into TWU, and there's another one that we've been talking about as well, but City Sites is the main one, and there must be similar circumstances from the short line perspective, from the New Jersey Transit perspective, from everybody's perspective. There has to be some other company sitting right next to you. We should unionize that company. So what kind of time, what kind of resources can we expect from the candidates? So start the same way, we'll work our way over. So Rick?
About what?
What time, what resources are you willing to apply for an attempt to expand the base of the local, to bring in more branches?
Well, I've never been out to the local office out there in Hackensack. How much do they pay for rent there?
The person to ask that kind of question is actually James. How much do they pay for rent? I believe it's about $5,000.
No,
Stop. The question was.
Yeah, let's stay on the question. Stay on the question. You're right, Gilbert.
If you were going to be vice president of the local, okay?
Right.
What type of new resources will you bring into the local to bring in new revenue? Do you have any thoughts on that?
When you say resources,
That wasn't the question.
What time and what resources would you, as vice president, devote to bring in more branches to the local? For example, the move on City Sites is the one I know, but every company has something else. Somebody's got to have somebody in mind from every single branch. So what, as vice president, would you apply to expanding our base, to increase the number of branches within the local?
Well, the way it works is like this. The reason that you have a local, people who have things in common. Now, what we have in common, say, with the ticket sellers is that we work with Gray Line, the same thing with the dispatchers. What we have in common with the drivers out in New Jersey is that we work on a bus in transportation. Now, using that as the base, from there, there's nobody that's driving, whether it's a delivery truck or anybody doing a performance art in Times Square, or any artist doing a drawing in Times Square that we couldn't pull in. The only way to pull it in is to give them some form of health care through the union, not through a company. And I think that's where resources should go with the company, is health care, because as Brother Lewis said, that's the scary stuff. My own personal thing is, yeah, and not just health care, but legal care. So we have a little bit of backup. And those, start from there. And also recruiting, because we have 900 members, and all of us are reps, not just the so-called officials who've been entrenched out in Jersey for years. So no, we got to have rep. Now, Brother Noel said, he said this to me when you guys had that committee, the contract committee. Why not have somebody with a card walking around the clipboard and say, hey, how they treat you? How they treat you? What's going on? That would show a little more confidence in our union if we had our union officials having reps going out and reaching out to the membership. I don't know, did that answer the question?
Yeah, good enough.
James?
James, it's your turn.
Well, organizing is actually part of my regular life already. Everyone knows that I travel with my business cards on me at all times. Many times when I'm giving a tour, my bus stops, and I get off the bus and start shaking hands on the sidewalk and meeting people. Later this month, I'll be heading to another part of our union to help in an organizing effort there. I do think that when you're dealing with people who aren't in a union, you hand them a business card, and it says local recording secretary, and they're like, what's that? You hand them a card that says vice president, you got a little clout with them already. It's actually helpful for the purposes of organizing. Everyone knows what the vice president is. And I think if I should win, that would help me in my organizing efforts as I travel around to places where I'm less known than I am here in Times Square. I would say, if you're looking for a hard number, Bob, I'll easily be giving 5 or 6 days a month to organizing.
Okay. And,
James,
sorry.
how well known,
Actually, why don't we get through the line and
let's
then we'll
do
go
that.
back, yeah, so, okay, Mr. Brooks, same
Yeah,
question.
I happen to know a little bit about that, and see, first, I would commit myself to talking to each and every one of those city site members and see how they feel about being unionized, and then how much time and effort would they put into, going without until they become unionized. Because to get a company that's not unionized to come to where you are, there's a lot of opinion, difference of opinions. And a lot of them may not want to be unionized because they feel that what they have going now is good for them. Then another half may feel just the opposite. But my job as vice president to try and bring them into my local would be, simple. Just go out there, talk to them, and tell them the advantage of being unionized and how I could help them as vice president if they become a member of my union.
And, are you finished? Mr. Ortiz, same
So, yes,
question.
yes, thank you.
Okay, I have good experience in organizing. A few years back, TWU International has an organizing department. And at the time, it was Frankie McCann and Johnny Carbone. And I worked with them to try and organize First Student out of Inglewood, which went bad.
Very bad.
Went bad. Because it's not easy to organize. As Brooke says, yes, you have the people that want to be organized and the ones that don't. The job of the organizer, and you need to know how to approach and how to find out who wants to and who don't want to. Because you don't want to deal with the one that don't want to. You want the ones that want to get organized. Those are the ones where, yes, guess what? You're going to have secret meetings.
Right.
You're going to be meeting in an alley with these people because they fear for retaliation, which happened to us in Inglewood. Okay, management found out what was going on. They got to a few people, and it all went sour very quickly. So, organizing is difficult. It's not a walk in the park, and I know that. Okay, so for the most part, yeah, I would dedicate time. I would, because I've done it before. But I do know in most organizing, it goes through the international, and they have an organizing team. Because handing out cards, which sounds nice, but again, they look at that card, they don't know. You have to sit down with these people and talk to them face to face.
Each and every one of them.
Okay, and you have to be able to pick out the ones that are gonna listen, not the one that's gonna go back and say, oh, guess what, there's a union outside. Because then we're in trouble. And a good example would be Carbone, who in Philadelphia got beat up. They went, found out what hotel he was in, and they beat him up, along with McCann. So organizing is not all played out to be what it is. It's very difficult. Yes, it can be done, but you have to know what you're doing.
Okay, that covered, sorry.
Did we get a chance to ask clarifying questions of the people's responses?
I guess we do, I hadn't thought of that. Who would be doing the clarifying, because we can run through everything. and go
Well,
back
it's
to
just
later.
something that Louis just said I've got a question about because it relates to the question that you asked.
We might as well do that. You can ask Louis a question.
Louis, Damon just wasn't clear about this. In the case of city sites, they are unionized. And in the previous efforts that we made, the retaliation of that union was to go after your membership. So if you would be joining the executive board and you would be voting on this issue, are we going to do this? Knowing what you know, that their game plan is to go after your members in response to our action here in New York, would you still vote on the executive board to make an attempt to bring those city sites workers in, or would you vote no?
I would vote no on the legal issues, because there's a lot of legality involved, simply put, raiding another union.
Yeah, but they're not AFL-CIO.
Okay.
We have no agreements with them.
But then you can get tied up in legal matters.
That's even harder.
You can get tied up. They can tie you up in court so fast.